Is this thing on? Is it working? Is it working?
Is it working?
I'm pretty sure
We're back!
Oh, and welcome back to the Brought to Light Masonic Podcast. I'm your host, Brother Jack Aquilina.
And I'm your host, Brother David Illingworth.
And yes, as David said, we are back. Thank God for that. Episode 48. It's only been, 4 months, David?
It's been about 4 months and 2 tries, so we're finally here.
Yes, try number 2. We did our first episode or recording of this episode probably early this week, and we had 4 hosts. It was Brother Steve Austin, Brother Paul Aquilina, myself, and you. And look, let's just say a budgie and a dog got in the way.
It did, and your knee, Jack. Your knee, which for some reason attracted the dog so much.
I had something on my knee. Just so our listeners know, we were recording this episode, and I must have been around another dog or something, and this pug I'm looking after at the moment was just attacking my knee. Not violently, but because it's got no face, it insists on pressing its whole face against your knee. And anyway, it was just weird for the rest of us, and we couldn't actually record anything because we kept laughing because of the noise it was making. It was horrible.
Yeah, it was very funny.
But look, as our listeners will be used to, we do digress, and it is great to be back with the Brought to Light Masonic Podcast. Today we're joined by a third host, and that is Brother Paul Aquilina. Paul, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jack and David.
It's good to have you back. And David, where the hell have we been? That's the question that everyone's been asking. We've been inundated with emails, text messages, you name it. Some of them nice, some of them abusive, more abusive than others. People saying to us, look, we miss you. Where are you? And then it went to, we miss you. What the hell are you doing? And then it went from that to, look, mate, this is not good enough. You're ruining my week. I love hearing your podcast. What's going on? So we felt the love and the hate, I guess you could say, David.
Well, we did. I'm actually surprised that we have any people that love us. I thought that it was everyone just hated us from for the drivel that we tend to put out. But apparently we must be doing something right with all the fans. But as you say, where have we been? It's been a strange old journey we've been on. And as I've said this to a few people, and I put it up on Facebook, that we have been working in the background, and it's true, we have been. And I think between you and I, Jack, probably for the better part of 3 months, we've been trying to get time to record an episode. But unfortunately, your life, my life, work, your new work, university studies, pretty much everything that could possibly go wrong or get in our way got in our way. So we do apologize to everybody for not being able to record, but you'll be pleased to know we're back.
And it's good to be back, and I guess we do owe our sort of listeners an explanation. So I'm going to give you my best excuse, not that it is an excuse, because ultimately we don't like making excuses here on the Brought to Light Masonic Podcast, but here's where I have been. I started a new job at the Supreme Court of Victoria, at the Court of Appeal, and for our overseas listeners, it's the second highest court you can possibly have in the country, and I'm very lucky to work for 3 wonderful judges, and that job is full-time. It was a big opportunity. By itself, it would be manageable, but when you mix that in with full-time masters and also a full-time graduate diploma of legal practice, which has been what I'm doing, plus all my Masonic commitments and other commitments with other organizations, you start to find that your time is a little bit thin. So I did have a bit of a busy 4-month period, especially getting past the probationary period of my work. But now that we're easing into the 2018, I am finding myself in a position where we have more time to do the things we love, and that includes this podcast. So just on behalf of myself, and I don't like apologizing, you know that, David, I never say sorry for anything, but I am regretful, just to use that language. I am regretful the fact that we haven't been on the podcast, and to receive so many messages of support and inundation of messages has been absolutely heartwarming. It's the only reason we're back, really. So, David, I know that we are the irrelevant soapbox that we are, but tell us, where have you been? What are your excuses as to why you haven't been co-hosting this show for the last 4 months?
Oh, my excuses are long and boring. Ultimately, there's been a few things, and I'll cover off one of the big things a little bit later on as to probably the main thing that's been taking up a lot of my time. But as our listeners know, I'm getting married this year now in 5 months' time. So that unfortunately has been chewing up a fair amount of my time, planning and getting everything like that sorted out. Work ramped up towards the end of last year, which meant I was a fair few late nights. And more recently just got a little kitten. So my free time has evaporated very quickly, but I've made a commitment with Jack, and I make it with everyone. on the new format, which I'm sure Jack and I will go into shortly. I'm going to find the time. I'm going to put it aside, put it in my calendar. So every 2 weeks, I think we're looking at now, I will be free and able to record.
Exactly right. And we will talk about, where we're going. We have spoken about where we've been. So there's no excuses now. We are back. So the question becomes, where are we going? Now, just so you know, this podcast has been extraordinarily popular in Australia, but also overseas with our overseas friends who have been listening to the show. Format, we're not going to be changing it too much because we've actually received a lot of messages saying that people listen to us because we're a bit different to other podcasts. And we get the balance right. We've got the banter and the conversation and the jokes, but we can also hold an episode that's quite educational, intellectual at the same time. So we're very lucky, David. We've got a good sort of format there. So our listeners are going to be able to really expect that to continue. But I guess what we're going to do is promise you that you'll get a fortnightly episode of this podcast. There may be some weeks where David and I are twiddling our thumbs. We might put them out weekly. There might be a situation every now and then where you might get one a month. But our aim is going to be fortnightly. We think that's the right sort of amount of time that we can dedicate. And also it gives you a chance to sort of allow time to pass so we can give you more comprehensive news, because we understand our news section is important. And we understand that we actually give voice to a lot of the members' opinions here in Victoria, which is really important in terms of enabling change to happen in our jurisdiction and to have people feel like they're able to have a voice in some of the big things that are happening. So it's not going to change too much. We're moving to fortnightly. It's going to be very, very positive. But other than that, David, I think that we're going to continue what we're doing and maybe add in a few extra little segments to break things up a bit and try and catch up to our friends at the Masonic Light Podcast who, as I understand it, are almost passing us. Almost there, but not quite.
It is true. They have caught right up. I think we're going to have to just spend a weekend and just force out a number of episodes just to be ahead of them. Because I don't like the idea that Larry Maris is ahead of me in anything apart from age and years. And potentially, and I throw it out there now, looking as good as he may look in a budgie smuggler. That's the only thing I'll give. I'll say, look, Larry, the budgie smugglers are all yours. I could wear one. No one wants to see that.
Well, look, if Larry's at that sort of age where if he did wear budgie smugglers, no one would blame him because he's just, let's have a conversation about this one day on the podcast, what it's like getting old. I think we can get an older brethren on here and talk about that because they always complain about the negatives of getting old. I think there are some positives, and that is being able to do whatever the hell you want because everyone's like, we're not going to judge this guy because he's old.
Well, that's the thing. There's that. The other great benefit is being able to get away with saying absolutely anything, and people just going, "Oh, yeah, he's just old," and there's no argument about what they've said. They could say the most vilely racist, insulting thing, and people just go, "Oh, yeah, he's old," and that's the end of it. They just ignore it from that point onwards. Let's go, "Yeah, he's crazy." He's like that.
So talking about getting old, where are we heading? We're heading in a direction that's going to be consistent. You can rely on us still. I hope that most of you haven't deleted the feed and you've kept the podcast episodes in the past on your iTunes and on your phone. That way you can keep up to date with our episodes. There is quite a good bank, and I hope they are continuing to be helpful and a range of discussions. We want to do a few more debates. We call them contested discussions rather than debates because there's no real need for argument in Freemasonry, but there are differing views and we like the contested discussion sort of model. And we're also going to continue the educational topics around some of the more interesting aspects of what we find about Freemasonry. And we will probably be looking into some of the high degrees in more detail as well. So a lot to be excited about, David. And the Brought to Light Masonic podcast, let's just say, had a bit of a hiatus, but it is back now. And we are back in full swing for 2018. So it's our listeners can stop sending the hate mail. Actually, no, if you want to send the hate mail, just send it to david.illingworth@BlueLoungeSC. And just he'll send it to me if it's relevant. Okay.
Well, I'd rather they send it to the vice president's email box because at the moment all I get is spam. So it'd be nice to get something other than spam that I can read and go, that's interesting. But no, it is good, and I think, to let our listeners know, we're also planning some other things because we have found, and as the year goes on, I'm more than likely going to get busy, and Jack, being part of my bridal party, is probably also going to get busy. So what we're also planning on doing is bringing on a nice rotation of hosts. So in the event that Jack and I are unable to do an episode, we'll still have other hosts that are able to come on and knock one out, such as Paul and Steve and Rob and things like that. So that no matter what we do, without fail, every fortnight or at maximum a month, there will be an episode out. It's a big claim, but I make it now.
Yes, and we'll try and keep to this promise, unlike our other promises. But
Yeah.
ultimately, we hope to draw on some of the skill and expertise of our foreign Bruleyland Social Club brethren. We've got people in Illinois. We've got people in Canada who are keen. So, and, you know, if you're a listener and you want to guest host an episode with us, by all means, just shoot us a message. We will actually Google Hangout with you wherever you are in the world at the right time, and you can co-host with us. This is a product that is for you. We don't get paid to do this. We do it out of the goodness of our heart. The only thing motivating us is that we actually enjoy, doing this for you because we think people get something out of it, and they tell us they get something out of it. And David loves hearing his own voice. But, look, let's put that to one side.
Look, no, it is true. I often wonder when I'm listening to our podcasts going, man, that's really good. And then I wonder if I'm being very narcissistic about it. But the one good thing I do find that there's one host on the podcast that I always agree with, and then there's this other little annoying one who says he's the state universal president who just always seems to be wrong.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just don't know how to feel about that sometimes.
Just as a bit of advice, one shouldn't reflect on themselves like that, David. You shouldn't be so harsh on yourself. And I know our listeners don't think that you're that bad. So, but I've never had anyone describe you as little before. But look, I'll leave that to you. Look, before we get into a discussion, because this episode is it's called Back to Basics, and we are going to be talking about mainly some of the big news that's been happening here in Victoria since we last had an episode, but also discussing where we've been masonically and where we're at, and also a bit about the future. We're going to be trying a new segment that's only really relevant for this period of the year. So before we get into all that, let's bring Brother Paul Aquilina into the discussion. Paul, welcome back, as I said earlier. And from what I understand, you're the only person who's guest host this show, besides me, obviously quoting myself, but who's actually been independently quoted in a newsletter and had an article written on about an episode of this podcast because of you. That was in the Devotion News. Brother Damien Hudson wrote a fantastic article about some of your remarks. So it's good to have you on. Maybe you should be the primary host of this show. I don't know.
No, I was honoured to be in the newsletter there, but I was happy also because he called me up personally and he actually thanked me for my opinion, which was surprisingly nice. Because I was still new to the whole Freemasonry thing. I didn't really understand how nice people really were, but just having an opinion is good enough to be a good person as far as they're concerned. So it's always good to come on the podcast and catch up with you fellas anyway. So.
Well, it's good to have you on, and we enjoy having the perspective of yourself. And just beside the fact that you're my brother, and I think that you're quite good on your feet, I think that it's just good to have an opinion of someone who is a little bit different, less of a nerd than David and I, that's for sure. So it's good to have that perspective. But tell us, in terms of the last 4 months or so, what have you been doing? What have you been up to? And obviously, what are you going to be more involved in the podcast in the future? Let our listeners know.
Yeah, hopefully I'm a lot more involved in the podcast. And in the last 4 months, I've been busy myself trying to obviously get some cash in before Christmas. We're going to Hawaii on the 30th, so I'm excited for that, and I'm trying to build up a bit of bank so we can have a bit of a nice holiday. And as far as Masonically, I've done my third, which I'm pretty sure the podcast already knows. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But yeah, congratulations to myself. Thanks, guys, for that.
I think Senior Deacon on that was quite good, to be honest with you. You should have won an Academy Award for the way in which you conducted your round. That's just my opinion.
Oh no, apparently it was terrible. But anyway,
he was pretty bad. He was pretty rusty. It must be all the power from being on a new throne that I think threw him off a bit.
Well, let's not spoil the surprise, but we will be getting into a discussion about what I've been doing masonically, and also David. I have joined another order. I mean, don't add that to the list. Don't count too much, but we will get.
No one can count that high, Jack. So you're safe there.
Thank God for that. Well, let's get into some of the news. It's good to have you guys on. There's been some big things that have happened. You might recall that when the last 4 or 5 episodes that we did record earlier in 2017, mid-2017 through to August, we did talk about a big event here in Victoria, which was the quarterly communications happening in September 2017, which had a discussion or a number of votes relating to some big changes proposed to the Constitution here in Victoria. And now, as you may recall, that debate focused around 4 particular motions, 4 or 5 motions, that looked at changing the way that the craft was administered and the way in which we did certain things here in Victoria. Now, the most controversial of those we discussed, which was the requirement for you to have mandatory police checks if you were to enter the craft, to be a applicant for membership. And the other one being, obviously, the reduction of the requirement to become master of your lodge from a 5-year master masonship, with one of those years being in one of the warden's chairs, down to a 1-year rotation. So theoretically, you could get your master mason's degree, become junior warden, and then become master of your lodge within 2 years of being a master mason, which would be very, very big changes. We had the vote on those motions, and as you might have recalled, we actually held a bit of a discussion about these on a number of occasions. We consulted broadly with young members across the state. We spoke with a lot of different people, and we expressed our opinion that we thought that those motions should have been voted down. And I guess one of the most interesting things that happened is not only were those motions voted down, they lost in the scale of 80 to 90%. It was an absolute landslide in favour of people who wanted to preserve the current institution. And boy, did it send a message to people, the proponents of change, about how they need to do things better before they'll get the support of the membership. It was a record turnout across the state. We had the main sort of venue was in Traralgon, where it was held, and obviously there was a number of people there. But in all the regional and remote Masonic centres across the state where people were voting, it was a massive turnout. I went to the Preston Masonic Centre. There was 75 to 100 people there, high energy, high sort of participation, and it was a fantastic show of democracy. So, David, big change, and not really unexpectedly, a big slapdown of some of these changes, which were, in my view, quite controversial and really poorly sold.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was actually at the quarterly communications. It was close enough to my home that I was able to go for a change and actually go there, which was a great experience for me. It's the first one I've been to where I was able to actually go there and see it all live and take part in it. And it was amazing. I mean, when the votes came up, there'd be a handful of people that would stand up for it, and then just the rest of the room would just stand up against it. But what I was most happy about with all the voting things, and especially this one, because we did say it was very controversial, but it was that a lot of people outside of ourselves and the people we'd spoken to were getting up beforehand and speaking against it and saying this is why it shouldn't change, or this is what's wrong with it. And it was much along the same lines as we've discussed before. Pretty much everything that was voiced was things that we'd already thought about and said, look, we understand the need for it, but there's better ways for it. But I must admit, you cannot get a stronger message sent to anyone than the absolute thumping that the vote got from the way it was. I think it was like 700 odd votes out of 800 against it and 100 for it. And you look at those numbers and go, that's the membership speaking loudly that it wasn't done right.
And it wasn't just the nature of the obviously, as we've just said, and you've just said as well, we agree, and with the problems identified. Freemasons Victoria, through their processes, and in which we participated in to a large extent, the writing of the strategic plan, the consultations, what they did a bit of survey stuff, a bit of polling, for which some of our members participated in as well, focus groups. We know the problem. The problem is the craft is over-regulated and difficult to maneuver, but this is the issue, right? These changes were so, I hate to use the word incompetent, but they were the wrong approach for the solution to the problems that we faced. I mean, looking at the 5-year sort of change, it was just an absolute unnecessary change. The way they went about it was unnecessary. And like I said to you, David, I could have fixed the problem they were trying to fix in one sentence. I could have drafted them something months ago and sent it to them, and they could have avoided the issue they've got. Not saying they should call on me when they want drafting done. I'm sure it's the last thing they want. But the point is, the problem was a real problem that they were trying to fix, but the solution was just wrong. It absolutely missed the mark. And I think a strong message has been sent. But maybe we should get Paul's opinion on this. Paul, obviously, you went with me to Preston to vote. I think it was the first quarterly communication you'd had the chance to see. Really exciting that you got to vote, by the way, because believe it or not, up until recently, we couldn't actually vote at quarterly communications. It was only past masters and wardens that could vote until Hillel Benedict, Most Worshipful Brother Hillel Benedict and his team changed it to open it up to everyone. If you're in Freemason, you can vote at quarterly communication. So from your perspective, I understand you weren't the most active you didn't read the motions beforehand in detail. You had no idea of what they were, but how did it feel for you? And you don't have to tell people how you voted, obviously, but how did your decision get made? What motivated you to turn up and make the decision that you did on the night?
Oh, the decision I made on the night was pretty spontaneous. I kind of just rocked up, got the information on the night, had a look through the papers quickly, but you could feel there was a feeling in the room. People felt almost betrayed by what was being proposed, and everything was cast in a dark light. But you've covered the result fairly well. I'm just going to move on to the aftermath. So the aftermath is looking promising, right? So Freemason Victoria has taken a few steps in the right direction, constructive steps in the right direction, to figure out where they went wrong, but as to say. So they've done a lot of things. They've talked to the members. They've kept communication up. They've really tried to really get back to the roots and had certain conversations with certain parties. I wasn't involved in any of this, obviously, considering my opinion's very limited at best. But as far as that, I think Freemason Victoria is doing a lot of good things, as well as actually getting the Deputy Grand Master at the moment, Keith Murray. So his speech on that night was very inspirational, and I actually agreed with a good 90% of what Keith Murray said. So that was fantastic to see that the next master is going to be a really important one to the craft, I think.
Yeah, I mean, let's just have a chat about that for a moment. We'll get back to where it all went wrong in a moment. But I have to say, I agree. I think his speech was fantastic. It was the highlight of the night. I mean, believe it or not, Keith Murray, Right Worshipful Brother Keith Murray, actually seconded the motion. I'm not necessarily saying that he agreed or disagreed with the motions as part of the board solidarity process. And obviously, he's the next Grand Master, so letting the platform go to a vote was very important, I'm sure. But this is the guy who seconded the motions. It got absolutely plummeted. It got destroyed in terms of the vote. Then gets up and delivers one of the best speeches I've seen a person deliver in Freemasonry. And I'm not blowing wind up anywhere, but it was a fantastic speech. It hit the right message. It was well timed. And what was it all about? It was all about getting back to the grassroots, listening to the membership, empowering lodges and decentralizing, people taking responsibility for Freemasonry, and also the message that we've all been saying for a long time, quality over quantity. That was the core message of what the next Grand Master of Freemason Victoria said, and it was fantastic, right on the money. I couldn't think of anything better for someone to say on such a divisive night, David. I think he was right on the money with that one. A great speech.
Oh, it absolutely was, and you are correct. He was absolutely spot on the money with everything he said, and I don't think there was anyone there that disagreed with the message he was sending there, because it was 100% spot on. And I mean, we've talked about it before, this big issue of, is it better to have a quantity of members that don't come to lodge at all, or a smaller amount of members that are great quality that will be Grand Master? And I mean, my view on it is, I believe that while I can understand the business side benefit of quantity, the reality is, if we keep letting in members who aren't meant to be members, people are joining for the wrong reasons, don't have the time or anything like this, all we're going to get is, in 5-10 years, there's going to be no one to be Grand Master. We need quality members who are able to go through the chairs at lodges, look at doing a grand team, work through it and become the next Grand Master. Otherwise, the organization's going to just fall apart anyway, because their leadership will disappear. And unfortunately, with a lot of the older members, we can't always rely on them to just pick up the slack and take over those chairs. The reality is, we want to turn this organization, we want to revitalize this organization. We need to get some younger members going through and potentially running for Grand Master. And me personally, I think that's the most important thing. And that's why I keep saying to you, Jack, it's about time you start looking at the big chair, because I think you'd be perfect for it.
I think you're going to ruffle a few feathers saying that one. I mean, look, I don't think I'm even allowed on a grand team yet, so we won't worry about that. But look, as I've said in previous occasions, you couldn't pay me enough to be Grand Master, but ultimately, I think you're right. I think we need to focus on getting through. We need to create an environment, and I think this is where Keith Murray is on the ball here. Create an environment that is flexible, that people enjoy, that people can take ownership of, that people can go to lodge, participate in the organisation, and feel as though they belong to something special. That's what they want. They don't want to be lectured to. They don't want glossy emails and pamphlets and photos that mean nothing. They don't want to be told we're listening to you and nothing happening as a result of that so-called listening. They don't want listening to as what they call them, road shows that go out where people are lectured to and their questions are not really answered. This, I think, is the core of what is wrong at the moment. I mean, there's some great vision, there's passion. Paul's right. There's been some attempts to sort of try and consult the membership and see where it all went wrong. The incoming Deputy Grand Master, who we'll talk about in a moment, and who is now the current president of the board, has been scrambling to try and ascertain what went wrong, and the board have been working really, really hard to try and recalibrate and get back in the right lockstep with the membership. But it all comes down, and this is what I want to talk about, where it all went wrong. It all comes down to one thing, and that is no one at least perceives, and I think perception is reality, no one perceives the organisation in terms of its administration to be listening. And, listening is hard. Good leaders need to know how to listen. And listening is more than simply barking achievements, which is all I tend to see, the barking of achievements, the bragging and the condescension. For example, recently there was an issue with the magazine. People realised they weren't receiving hard copies of the magazine anymore, which I used to like receiving. And instead of addressing the matter in what I would consider to be an adult way, how it was addressed was it was called Stickergate. Someone decided. I'm not going to say who, but someone decided to call it Stickergate. Can't get much more condescending than that. And then robocalls were made to every member from the organisation apologising. Now, look, that second step, I personally would take offence to that, but the second step maybe worked for a few people. They felt very special getting those phone calls.
Before we continue, is there any chance you could define that, Stickergate?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Apparently, the stickers, there's these new Freemasons Victoria stickers that were meant to be included in the magazine, and no one received the magazine, so they received the stickers. So instead of just saying, okay, look, we acknowledge that we didn't communicate here and we're going to fix it, there was in one of the FMV emails, it said, the newsletters, it said, #Stickergate has been resolved. I mean, you can't get much more condescending than that, in my view.
Wow, that's terrible.
And I don't think this is intentional, and I don't want anyone listening to think I'm casting dispersions, but we have a duty, I think, as members and as podcasters to point out the truth, and that is that when people screw up, it needs to be pointed out so it doesn't happen again. And same with us. When we've made mistakes in the past, it's been pointed out, we've apologized, and this is one of those situations where it's so out of lockstep with what the membership expects that it's only going to create further issues with trust and confidence. The issue here is listening. There's a bubble that's being created, and I'm sure every organization has it, but we need to get that bubble burst, and we need to focus on getting back to the grassroots membership feeling empowered. That's important. Listening is more than saying you're listening. Listening is actually about doing things that people are saying that they need done within reason, and also having the capacity, the emotional intelligence to make people feel as though they're being empowered by you. Good leaders speak last and listen first. That's not what's happening. I don't know. What's your view on that, David? You got a view on that analysis?
Yeah, I mean, you're completely correct. I mean, the reality is Freemasonry is a membership, and FMB is a membership organisation. We are only as strong as our members. And I think what upsets a lot of people in any organisation is when the leadership of that organisation doesn't consider them in actions that they make. It unfortunately creates a massive, disjointment of the leadership and the membership. So they go, well, the members go, well, hold on, you're there to service me so that I enjoy my membership, and you're just ignoring me and all the other members. Now, I'm sure in everything they've done, there was probably a handful of people that said, yeah, we don't like it, we want to change it. And I think this is where part of the issues with a lot of organizations and even governments to some degree come from. They'll ask a minority, they'll ask 5 people, hey, do you read this? No. Do you read this? No. Go through them all, none of them read it. Oh, no one reads it then. But hold on, your sample size was 4 people that happened to be standing near you, not the membership. And I'll give FMV credit for one thing. The best thing that they've started doing, it can be a little bit tedious, but I think that they're working hard to bridge the gap, is all of the member surveys they're sending out. In all the emails, just about every other email, there's a thing saying, hey, we want your opinion on this. Here's a survey. Can you spend 5 minutes doing it? And I think that's a great way for them to join with the membership and actually get the pulse of what the members think. Gives them hard data that they can then use to make grand decisions. And I mean, that's the thing. You're exactly correct. They've got to listen to us a bit more and stop their condescension. I mean, no one likes being talked down to at all.
Well, even if they don't intend to be condescending, that's not the point. I mean, I'm not casting dispersions, and neither are you, to say that they're deliberately doing these things, but perception is reality, right? And if you're perceived to be condescending, then you are condescending, right? That's just how it is in these organizations.
It's like that in every organization. I mean, I've worked in businesses for a number of times, and I remember having this discussion with a manager of the time, and I said, you are perceived to be doing nothing. And he goes, but we're not doing nothing. We're doing lots of things in the background. I go, exactly, but the frontline staff don't see that. They just see you as doing nothing. And unfortunately, because they perceive you to be doing nothing, you are doing nothing. Because you're exactly correct. Perception is reality, unfortunately.
Especially when there's any democracy involved, which our organisation is democratic. So, we may not be able to hire and fire the staff, but we put the people in there who do hire and fire staff. So, the accountability aspect is important. That's the other thing as well. I think listening is also about being accountable and doing more than just trivialising membership issues as being just a bunch of troublemakers or grumpy old men complaining about things. That's just not the right attitude. But Paul, what do you think? Do you think we're on the money here in terms of listening? I know you've said that they're doing a little bit more of it, which is true, and that all credit due. But do you think the cause of why these votes, the vote turned out the way it did, and why members, came in huge numbers to the quarterly communication, is it because people feel that they aren't listened to?
Well, it's definitely frustration. Whether that frustration is relative, I think everyone's got their own reason to be frustrated at one point or another, and especially with all the changes, there's obviously been a lot going on in the high levels, a lot of cleaning up, and a lot of different things happening. That not that I've been around for them, but the older membership is definitely very concerned with how things are looking. So, which does concern me, because I look to these people as idols and heroes and all the rest, and mentors and all the rest. And if they're worried and they've been in this a lot longer than I have, then that gives me some cause to be worried. But in the same sense, I'm a new member. I'm always happy to see where the craft is going. I'm always happy to be part of that as much as possible. I'm always out to give advice. In case FMV is listening, I'm always out to give advice. Paul Aquilina, hit me up and I'll let you know exactly what's going on. I'm a straight shooter.
At a very reasonable fee.
I think you're talking about Jack. Jack charges per word. I charge per sentence.
Per letter, actually.
Yeah.
So
per character.
You got to learn from your brother a bit more, Paul. How else are you expected to make a billionaire by the time you're 30, like Jack's planning to?
Prime Minister by 30.
Yeah. But I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think you said something on the lines of, what did you say? Yeah. You said something in my head.
See, Dave, if you were to say something...
Literally said it just then.
Yeah, if you were to say it, he'd be listening. When I was looking directly into his eyes, and he didn't pick out one word of what I said.
The particular words you used.
He's trying to feed back on it. That's all right. Realistically, I think there is a good future, all in all, hopefully, if you don't get in there, because your memory is clearly deteriorating quicker than you can think. So
it's the holiday blues, mate. It's the holiday blues.
Holidays
I'm sure our members won't take it against us. But my main point is listening. I think accountability is important as well. Oh, that's right. You said change. You said that there are some, people have trouble with change, but that's true. That's a reality. But what is also condescending when the organisation says, "Oh, well, you're just angry because you're scared of change." Isn't that a bad line? I think that to be the most condescending line you can possibly think of. You're scared of change. In other words, it's okay. You don't actually oppose what we're doing. You're just an old, ignorant person who's scared of change. That is an attitude that I've heard, and we've been actually victims of this as well. In terms of we've said it maybe on occasions, but on reflection, it's not the right approach. You need to say, yes, change is hard, but here's the case for it. And there was no case for these motions. And I think they got the result that they deserved, to be honest with you. But
well, that's the thing. I mean, as we discussed, with a lot of this, the answers that they were given when people were saying, why is this needed, weren't really answering it. It was sort of saying, why is it needed? Well, it's needed because. And no one was satisfied by that. If they'd come out and honestly said, this is needed, here's the reasoning why, here's what we're trying to achieve, and did everything like that, there's a chance it probably would have gotten over the line. But just saying it's needed because and not giving any answer, or it's needed, that's a good question, I'm glad you asked it. Oh, look, there's a tree over there, and ignoring it doesn't help anything.
One thing they're missing, though, which is obviously a little bit self-serving for us in terms of the Blue Land Social Club, but the main thing they're missing was agents of change. There was no grassroots movement in favour of these motions. In my view, the best way to build a coalition in favour of any big change is to have a grassroots support. I mean, we saw this under Most Worshipful Brother Hillel Benedict. If you refer to episode 10 or thereabouts, I interviewed him. We discussed one of the biggest changes that had happened in our history, which was the altering of the Benevolent Fund, which ended up becoming Freemasons Foundation. So they got our charitable money and separated it into a separate company and split it off from Freemasons Victoria for a number of reasons, tax reasons being one of them. And it was huge. It was controversial. But there was a groundswell of grassroots support and opposition. And I think the vote came down to something like, 10 votes in it, 10 votes in it. And we're talking, a $500 million decision, so big decision. But the Grandmaster and his team were able to build up grassroots support. And that's what you need. You need to take the people along with you. And you need people like us, the Blue Lounge, people in this podcast who are voicing the everyday concerns we hear in lodges, people outside the bubble, to take those visions, those great ideas, and sell them. Because what happens is you get mismatched when you're not actually understanding what it is you're doing. Dictators are great because they can come in and wield a gun and say, well, don't care what you think, this is happening. In our organization, you need to say, I care what you think, here's what we want to try and do. How are we going to get you to come on the journey with us to make it happen? And there has to be some compromise there. Sorry, David, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that's the thing. And I think even in the last couple of months before the vote, we were sort of saying to FMV, to anyone there, if they want to come and discuss it, come on board, because we'd love an open and honest discussion about why it's in it. And then we could get to the crux of what are they trying to achieve and our concerns and the membership's concerns, everything like that. And I think that was a missed opportunity by them. And I know that there's a number of people in Grand Lodge and FMV that listen. So, I mean, I throw the offer out there again. If you're putting through changes and you really want the membership to understand what is going on, come on. We can Google Hangout with you, we can come to you, we can work it out, and we can have an honest discussion. But I give this warning. We're not a propaganda machine. We will ask the questions that need to be asked, and we will press for answers. If the answers you give are not satisfactory, then unfortunately, we will be very harsh around that, because like any good journalist, and I know we're not technically journalists, but along those lines, we will keep asking until we get to the bottom of basically the reasoning behind anything.
Exactly right. And I think it comes down to the fact that, like we do with any of our guests that we invite on, we ask a range of questions, both tough and easy. But, look, not being scared to face the music and the tough questions is an evidence of a change that's worth supporting. If you're scared of criticism, then you're not going to get the change you want. And those tours that they did, what they call them, the road tours or the road shows, were just nothing but an exercise of just fake consultation. And I think that the survey evidence has demonstrated that. So look, enough of being critical. I hate to be critical, and we always do, but the concerns of members are voiced. I hate to say that we're on the right side of history here, but we picked up on this issue very, very quickly in its early days before it became a big thing. And we ran through it, we consulted. We did exactly what we expected FMV to do, which they clearly didn't do appropriately. And, we were on the right side of history here, David. I hate to point it out, but we had our finger on the pulse. So this so-called irrelevant soapbox that we run here maybe is actually worth listening to, because we tend to voice the actual opinions of actual members who we speak to nearly on a weekly basis, because we're out there talking to people on the grassroots.
On a daily basis.
On a daily basis. Exactly right. So we're on the right side of history.
Well, that's the thing. I'm glad we are, because it sort of speaks to that our thinking is on the right path. But I do look at it and go, it's a little bit sad that they weren't really looking at it or talking about it enough to make the membership understand, because there were parts of it that we kind of agreed with, but as you said, Jack, they went about it the wrong way.
Yeah, the wrong solution for the right problem, right? So
Mm.
this is the issue. But look, either way, it is somewhat positive. I mean, the new Grand Master coming in April, as we've said, is a fantastic man, a guy who has some seriously positive vision, a guy who, we couldn't give a stronger endorsement of, a real visionary, a guy who's very down to earth. This is a man who travelled and visited every craft lodge last year as a road tour for his incoming Grand Mastership. And we're not talking about running around with pomp and ceremony and apron sniffing. Went in as a past master unannounced and sat amongst the brethren as equals. The guy who calls you brother and expects you to call him brother.
Mm.
We've got a bright future ahead. We've got a great incoming Grand Master. The board, I believe, is made up of people who love the organisation and are passionate and trying to do the best they can with the resources we've got. We've got an admin team at Freemasons Victoria, Ben Quick being an example, who are fantastic, who are responsive, who are hardworking, who are passionate. We've got so much skill. We've got so much potential. We're financially sound. We're a very financially sound organisation. The only thing inhibiting our future is our capacity to overcome the challenge of communication. And I think the moment they engage people like us, that's why I thought the partnership, the Blue Lounge, was so positive, such a great thing before it was dropped. And we hope we can engage in the future to re-establish it, engaging with the grassroots, not just the Blue Lounge, but as many grassroots members as possible. We'll see this organisation take off, and we can be world leaders in what we do. So I'm really happy, and we've been invited. I've been invited, and I assume it's maybe because I'm Blue Lounge, I'm not sure. I've been invited by the CEO, Ms. Jane Sidman-Clark, to come to a forum later this month, where there'll be members of the board and district coordinators to really reflect on changes over the last 18 months and probably have this discussion we're having now amongst the privacy of those people. And, I would say publicly, I'm very, very, very impressed that the invitation went out. I'm very grateful. I really do appreciate the invitation from Freemasons Victoria, considering the fact that, maybe the Blue Lounge and this podcast and Freemasons Victoria, I've had the best and the worst of times together. It's great to have that invitation. I really do hope it's a sign of things to come where maybe the circumstances of power have maybe, it's come back to bite them, and they've realised now that maybe they need to sort of more than do. So I'm really, really happy about the future.
Well, that's the thing, and I think that's a fantastic first step. And I mean, as we've thought about it, when the relationship ended, we said, look, we were always open to the relationship being re-engaged. We're very much for that, but we want it to be re-engaged in the right way. And I think this is a fantastic first step that they're making. Hopefully, it's a positive one. I think that would be nothing better if out of this day that you spend with them, we can get some positive traction on that. But one thing I would say that I think is going to be exciting as well is hopefully, because we are on fairly good terms with Keith Murray and we like him and he's a top bloke, I would hope that we could potentially have our first Grand Master interviewed on the Brought to Light Masonic podcast.
Well, that'd be
I
good.
think if we can make that happen, I think it'll be great. And I've already worked out how we ask him. Come on our podcast, we have free scotch.
Well, I think that's the way to win his heart, to be honest with you.
I thought the best way would just be follow him around with microphones until he
until he stops walking.
Yeah, he just had to say something. Like, sooner or later, it gets old. You've been following me for 6 months. All right, let's do it.
Two things I know about the next incoming Grand Master will either be Scotch or on the golf course. One of those. So we'll have to. Most worshipful brother. Oh, sorry, incoming most worshipful brother Keith. We will be following you around, and hopefully we do get you on the podcast. And I'm sure he'd be more than happy to come on. He's a really great guy. And I really do suggest that if you want to get along to a historic event, and this is a sign of things to come. I think there's a joint grand installation happening in April this year, 2018, at Crown Palladium, a great location. It's going to be the joint grand installation of Most Worshipful Brother Keith Murray, the craft installation, and also the Grand chapter installation happening earlier that day with a joint dinner. It's going to be a fantastic event. You should get along. We were discussing in our previous recording, and maybe worth bringing up again, there might be a bottle of scotch in it for you. We've been told that they're gone, but White Rose Brother Keith might bring it back. Scotch, if you do sign up, you might be one of those lucky draw winners, but it is worth getting along to, and check it out at Freemason Victoria's website. Just chuck it in Google. We'll put the link in the show notes. But of Right Worshipful Brother Keith Murray.
Yeah, I keep trying to work out whether I'll have the time and the money to be able to go, but I highly recommend, if you are able to and you've got the time, then do get along. I think it'll be a fantastic day and night event, and if it's at Crown, I can only imagine the food will be exceptional.
Now, let's before we move on to our next item of news, which is of course going to be about the election of the new Deputy Grand Master, who we'll announce in a moment. Let's break it up, David, by doing one of our favourite honours and duties that we do every episode, which is, of course, have a word from our sponsors. Maybe you want to ring in the advertisement for us.
Yeah, I can most certainly, and I just want to start off before we jump straight into the ad for our lovely friends at the Happy Masons Club. Did want to apologise for our absence of late. We haven't forgotten. We do sincerely apologise that we haven't been able to get one out weekly and have the ad blaring. But I want to make this very clear. It hasn't stopped us supporting the Happy Masons. Everybody I speak to is a new brother, or anybody I speak to that says, I need an apron, I say, go to the Happy Masons. They're the best way. They're the best place to go for aprons because the quality is amazing. And I'm led to believe that they're actually moving manufacturing of the aprons to Victoria or to Australia. So that all the more reason to support a local company and get locally made goods. But now, in the words of Jack, a word from our sponsors. Do 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 do.
And welcome back. And yes, please check out the Happy Masons store. You can check out their wares on their website, or you jump on www.blueloungesc.com. And if you go to our store, you can check out our stuff. You can get for a free donation. You give us a donation, we'll send you a free little package as a thank you for supporting the club. But you can also see the wares of the Happy Masons store, for which you can obviously click on and download and access through the website. And your support for them will support the Blue Lounge Social Club, which is supporting the recruitment, retention, education, support of young Freemasons, wherever they may be, whether it be in Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, Ontario, in Canada, or this great state of Illinois, the United States of America. So please get on board and support us and support the Happy Masons, who, of course, our favourite sponsors. Now let's get on to the next.
But before you jump into it, Jack, I should also say, don't also be sure, if you're jumping on our website, to check out our Blue Lounge Social Club pins, and I believe we still have some of the stubby holders. So be sure to check that out, because all of that, any from the money and purchase from that, does come back to the club and does help support us.
They're part of the donation package, aren't they, Jack?
Yeah, they are. They are. So if you jump on the website and you donate some money, there'll be links. We will send you the stubby holder or the pin, depending on how much you donate. And obviously, already your donations have gone towards setting up new Blue Lounge social clubs overseas. So if you're an American and you've contributed, we've had quite a few Americans buy pins. Your money has gone back to the United States of America in supporting the establishment of the Blue Lounge Social Club in Illinois. It's been fantastic. They've done well. They're absolutely killing it. We'll get back to them later in news. But let's get to the next item of news that's happened here in Victoria. One of the other big things that were happening besides the big vote in September last year was, of course, the election of the next Deputy Grand Master, who by rights gets to become the next Grand Master after Right Worshipful Brother Keith Murray. And the result of that was the election of Right Worshipful Brother Richard Elkington, who is from the Gippsland area, a member of Lodge Cornucopia, who obviously belongs to the same lodge as our friends Simon Reynolds and Worshipful Brother Robert Billing.
And me.
Up in Gippsland. And you, yes, you remember there. Up in that neck of the woods, the Latrobe Valley. As a career, he's involved in the power authority out there. He's very involved. He's been very involved in the government sector for a long time, and a long time activist when it comes to the controlling of government boards and regulatory bodies, and very experienced in that respect. And of course, Masonically, he's been involved in a number of other orders. He's very senior in the operatives here in Australia, and of course, he was the past president of the Board of General Purposes, and now the Deputy Grand Master elect. So, a very eminent person to be put into that position, someone who we're quite familiar with in our past negotiations with Freemasons Victoria. And David, we're looking forward to having a fantastic time getting to know him a bit more, and obviously seeking an idea of what he's going to do to continue some of the great reforms and initiatives that no doubt will follow the installation of Keith Murray.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know him personally from Lodge, of course, and I think they couldn't have chosen a better person. I don't know, admittedly, who else was running, who else was in line for it, but I must admit Richard's gonna do a fantastic job as the Grand Master. But unfortunately, I feel a bit sorry for poor Richard, because I reckon he's going to have some huge shoes to fill from Keith. But if he does as good a job as we all believe he is able to do, then that just means Freemasons Victoria for the next 4 years is going to have back-to-back strong Grand Masters who hopefully bring about a lot of change and really launch our organisation into the next century.
Paul, any observations on the new Deputy Grand Master?
I'm just excited now that everything's starting to look up. It sounds like a bit of positivity coming from you fellas, which is unusual.
It is unusual. We acknowledge this. Normally we're fairly grim, but I say grim. I mean, I'm always upbeat and positive. Jack's always the doomsayer. I've never said a nasty word about anything.
I prefer to say, a bit realistic about these things. It's but look, I'm sure people say just as nice things about us off air as well, and I'm sure that they're always welcome to start a podcast and talk about us as well. I mean, but look,
wow, what a boring podcast! Start a podcast to talk about a podcast. I'd listen to it, but I would imagine it would be awful based off the subject matter that they're talking about.
They'd have 3 listeners, you, me, and Paul.
Yeah.
But I think you're right there, Paul. I mean, I think that it'll be exciting to see some positive change, and obviously these 2 brethren, Richard Elkington and Keith Murray, these are the sort of people we need who are able to actually bring the membership along for the journey, not just talk down to them. And I think that's essential, really, really, really essential. And I can't wait to work with them. And Richard Elkington, of course, and he'd say this anyway, he was very much instrumental in arranging the original relationship that the Blue Lounge Social Club had with Freemasons Victoria. A big supporter of young Freemasons. Out in the Gippsland area, he's been instrumental in bringing some of our greatest talents in terms of our leaders in the Blue Lounge Social Club. So no doubt very positive, and we wish him all the best and look forward to working with him as closely as possible over the next 4 years, 2 as his term as Deputy Grand Master and 2 as Grand Master. So all very, very exciting times to come. David's not.
Oh, sorry.
David's gone. That's all good. That's the perils of having a co-host who thinks too much.
Yep. Sorry. You were cutting to me.
He's lost in concentration. See, we've been gone for 4 months, ladies and gentlemen and brethren, but we still haven't lost our unprofessional touch. So,
well, it wouldn't be the Brought to Light Masonic podcast if we weren't completely unprofessional 90% of the time.
That's exactly right.
The person I feel sorry for is the person who has to edit and produce this our podcast and make it listenable. I feel really sorry for that person. If I knew who he was and not just the gremlin in the background, then I'd probably say something. But oh well, I'm sure he appreciates it.
They say he doesn't sleep, and when he does, he screams.
Yes, well, yeah. I mean, I believe he's sitting next to me. But it is a big job. But that's why the fortnightly thing's going to make things a little bit easier as well. And hopefully our listeners appreciate that the quality will go up. We are going to try and match the Masonic Light podcast quality. They have a fantastic quality podcast. Some of their episodes, I have to say, and Jason Lewis, if you are listening, I don't know, you dropped the ball a little bit. I've heard some echoing. There's a bit of blaming of Larry, but I don't know. I reckon it's just a bit of laziness going on there.
That's a reverb effect. I've done that on purpose.
I think what they do is they do a lot of on-location recording. So they sound great when they're in their studio. But Jack, you keep letting me turn your bedroom into a studio where we can record it, which I think is a bit rude, personally. But I think when they're on location, it's good. But that's one thing that I would love us to start doing at some of these things. I've listened to a few of theirs where they've gone out, they've taken all their equipment and they've gone somewhere to a big event, whether it be, I think they did one recently at Lodge in the Woods. And I'm like, man, that's a great time to record an episode or to an installation. So we may even think about doing it at Keith's installation. We just have to pick our time, right? Because over the speeches, it might be a bit rude if we're in the background talking about it.
And a location that has at least maybe 5 PowerPoints.
Yeah.
That's going to be convenient.
We'll just bring a generator. It'll be fine. No one will notice the sound of a generator firing up.
The noise of the pull cord while Keith Murray's doing his speech. Thank you, everyone.
Add some carpet would be nice as well. So it's good to be in an insulated room. But yeah, no, absolutely right. And we obviously love the Masonic Light Podcast. We did miss our Christmas special, which I'm really upset about. That is something we want to do. We want to launch back with that. But maybe we have to just organise a New Year's special. If we're really smart, we could even try maybe after Australia Day or a week before or something, or a week after. We could even look at maybe doing an Australia Day special, and we can sort of get them in on the Australia Day fun. Or if not, we will get them on eventually, because we do love them and we do miss them. And they are really the only other podcast out there that has grown up as we have. We started a month after they did. And our episodes are now nearly equal. So it's we do encourage you to listen to them if you haven't, and we do congratulate them on catching up finally. But as I was saying, with Paul editing and a few other things happening, we're going to try and reach the same quality. And you would have noticed on this episode, the intro was a little bit different. It was mainly more of a joke than anything. We'll be reverting back, but we'll try and get some music more involved and do some segments and really get this podcast sort of as needs you may have on a Monday morning on the train to work or in the car to work. But we're definitely happy to take your suggestions. So send us an email if you want. Send those emails, by the way, to podcast@blueloungesc.com, or you can jump on to Facebook and talk to us on our page. You can send us a message, and either David, Paul, or I, or maybe Steve or someone else will get back to you, and we will try and incorporate. But your support is obviously really, really important.
I will also throw it out, Jack, while we're talking about support. If you're an inspiring musician, or you listen and you make music, or you can play music, if you get bored one day, maybe write us a song. And we'll be more than happy if we like it and it's all good. We'll put it on as our theme music, because we would like to update some of our music throughout the episode. And unfortunately, we're a bit like the BBC. We're an impoverished organisation, and we can't always afford the greatest music that's not royalty free. So if you've got some music and you want it played, we're more than happy to shout your name and how people can find you, and maybe you'll get it played on our lovely podcast.
I mean, I've never heard the BBC described as impoverished. I mean, but
they'll never describe themselves. Unlike us, they're normally very, very professional. We just come out and say we're impoverished.
Jack, you've got to start watching some of the earlier Top Gears. Jeremy Clarkson, who I channeled for the We're Back from, describes the BBC as an impoverished organisation in a lot of the earlier episodes. I agree with you. I don't think they're impoverished, unless by impoverished he means loaded with cash.
Literally the only news network or station in the world that actually can tax its constituents. In the UK, you have to pay a TV license every year to have a TV, and that money goes direct to the BBC. The only can tax its listeners. I mean, if only we could do that. If FMV is listening, we're happy to issue brought to Light Masonic Podcast licenses to the world.
Tax to everybody in the Grand Lodge. Why am I paying this money for? It's for our podcast. What podcast?
What podcast? Those maniacs that we listen to every 2 weeks. Exactly right. Well, let's jump on to the next topic, and obviously that is, where have we been Masonically? Let's talk a little bit, give everyone a bit of an update of what we've been doing Masonically. Paul sort of gave us a brief idea of what he'd been doing recently, so we'll get to Paul last. What have you been doing? I know that you became a Master Mason earlier this year. You've been a Master Mason for last year, so I should say. We're still thinking we're in 2017, but you became a Master Mason. You made the mistake, or the right decision, I'll let you decide, of joining an additional craft lodge. You've made eye contact left, right, and center. Tell us, what have you been doing?
Oh, I've been so busy. As I think we were trying to discuss this in the last podcast, whether it had been announced, whether I told people before the last episode or not. But I'll assume I haven't. I was basically asked, unfortunately so, and I say unfortunately not for being asked, but for the reasoning, to fill in as inner guard at Brunswick United. So I've been having the great pleasure of doing that for the past several months, which has been a great challenge for me. It's been a lot of fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, but I've been learning so much on how to do it all and getting it all right. But unfortunately, I did have to fill in for a brother who was unfortunately sick and unable to continue doing it. And I must admit, I've seen him at Lodge. He's all better now, and he's back at Lodge. And he's still not 100%, but he's probably 90%. But even just speaking with him, he's grateful that I've been able to take the pressure of having to come to Lodge every month or come to rehearsals and things like that off his hands. And it's been a great honour for me to be able to do that. But unfortunately, and unfortunately, my good deeds, and I'll let Jack explain whether I'm any good as inner guard or not. But unfortunately, it appears I must be doing something right, because Cornucopia, my other craft lodge, has sort of heard that I'm not too bad, and they've now asked me to be their inner guard. So I'm getting installed as their inner guard in March. So that should be fun. So I'll be inner guard at 2 lodges before more than likely becoming junior deacon later this year at Brunswick. So it's going to be a fun Masonic year for me, I reckon.
You know, I mean, when they say that I can't say no, I think you're walking down the same footsteps, my friend. Don't make eye contact. And even if they do ask if you're not making eye contact, just always say no. Just to every question. How are you, Jack? No. That's what I was going to say that to everyone. Anyway, I'm practicing that in the mirror. I've been doing it all summer. I don't know if we'll see how much I succeed this year. But look, you have done a great job as inner guard. You've really come a long way. You know, as you said, the circumstances were really difficult in the sense that, you know, poor Bill Wilkinson has had bowel cancer, and amazingly, bowel cancer surgery bounced back 100%. He's fine. Just giving you the opportunity now because you're doing it while he's sick. But you've done a really good job throwing the deep end, and not only have you been doing the inner guards role, you've been doing charges in addition to that as well, which has been really encouraging. And I have to say, you know, when I got made junior warden of Brunswick United, I enjoyed a lot of things. The gavel, when they gave it to me, I love banging that gavel every meeting. But my greatest pleasure in Freemasonry is having you as my slave. Inner guard has to report to the junior warden, and when I call out to say, "Brother Inner Guard, take the report," or whatever I say, it's nice to yell at you. I love it. It's great. I get the chance to yell at you once a month. It's fantastic.
It is good, and I must admit, I'm actually really glad that you're the junior warden, because unfortunately at Brunswick, and he does a fantastic job, but our Tyler outside tends to get a little bit enthusiastic sometimes, and will knock on the door at the generally the wrong time. And as inner guard, I was always told basically by a lot of people, as soon as it knocks, you just stand up and go and do your thing. And sometimes it's in the middle of the master greeting people or something going on, and I often look at you going, "Do you want me to stand up? I mean, what do I do here?" And I rely heavily on you to say, "No, just wait a minute," and then once it's all done, then get up and do it. So it's good to have someone that I can trust to make me not look like a fool.
Well, we do run a bit of our own show, which some people listening from Victoria might think is a bit strange, because usually the junior warden, you know, or most of the officers just act ceremonially. They don't actually think when they're in the chair. They just do whatever the ritual says, and they spout the lines, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But when I'm in office, I tend to know what my officer does, what it can do, and in the circumstances, adapt those to the circumstances. So if the Tyler is knocking early and it's halfway through the master speaking, instead of everyone seizing up and the DC needing to get up and say, "Look, guys, this is what you do in this situation," it's a matter of I control what you do, and I control when the visitors come in and out. So we're not going to wait for the DC to turn around and nod. We're not going to wait for the master to turn around and nod. When it's ready and when it's calm, and I'll look at the master and I'll tell him there's a report, or I'll tell you to do what you need to do. And I have to say it's gone down really well, because that independence in office and understanding and using that office in a way that's real rather than ceremonial has actually enabled us to get visitors in and out pretty quickly. It's been quite efficient. There's been a bit of humour, like when we were running out of time and they wanted to bring the candidate back in after the degree, and it was knocked halfway through a second rising, and I said, Brother Inegard, admit hastily or with haste. A few people like that one. So, you got to have a bit of fun. You got to, I think, when you're in office, live that office. You got to be that office. You've got to take it in your stride, and you and me have done that to a large extent. It's been good to see you do that because, I have to say, and I don't want to say that I want to blow wind up your orifices too much, but I want to say that I was on the David Illingworth train very early. I did tell the lodge on a number of occasions, you're the man to get into that position, and finally it took a tragic situation to get you in there. But I think everyone, including Bill, who was in that position, is really happy that you're doing it. So well done, David. Just don't make eye contact anymore, and any question you get asked, with the exception of me, just say no.
Yeah, I know, but you're the one in 2 years' time, Jack, or almost a year's time now, who will be the master asking me things. So as soon as you ask me something, no, sorry, Jack, can't do it, nope.
Well, from what I understand, with the exception of Tyler and Treasurer in our jurisdiction, the master appoints his office bearers. Overseas, they elect them individually. But so you won't have a choice. You'll be sitting there at installation and you'll hear, I appoint David Illingworth to X. And if you don't like it, then I'll get one of my officers to spear you to death.
Except it's going to be really bad, Jack. You're going to be master when I'm probably senior deacon. And you'll turn to me and ask me to do something. No.
Well, you're going to have to bring up the minutes to me every meeting. So that'll be
good. No, I'm just going to say no. He's read them. He's fine with them.
You get to throw the gavel at him then.
Yes, I think that's a situation where the title will be impaling you. But talking about kicking some goals, I have been able to do some of that. Constant victories over here. I was put in as junior warden. It was a great experience. It is a great experience. I enjoy the role. It is sad not being on the floor. Now, when I became deacon for the first time, I did dislike it substantially. It's very nerve-wracking. It's a big job. A lot to remember, a lot of eyes on you, a lot of focus. You are the ceremony of the night. You are the peacock that walks around and everyone sort of judges based on their performance. And now that I'm not on the floor, I do miss it. I get a bit fidgety. I get a bit bored. Paul was sitting next to me at one meeting and I just kept annoying him because I'm sitting there going, I've got nothing to do right now, and probably should have been doing that halfway through a third degree. But ultimately, it's an interesting position because it is preparing you for the big chair, which I will be in July 2019. Believe it or not, year away.
Yeah,
not too far, is it?
We're all going to be busy that day.
Well, like I said,
I'm not going to be busy, but I won't be there.
At least someone's honest on this podcast. But believe it or not, David, at Brunswick United, we're not going to say Hugh, of course, because he hasn't yet announced it himself, but a very special person to you and me, especially to me, a man who has played a huge role in my Freemasonry. I don't think I'd be as involved as I am without him. He's actually put his hand up to go in the chair at Brunswick United just so he can be my IPM, because he wants to cause me trouble all year when he's sitting next to me, when I'm master. So big year ahead. It's going to be fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to it. And I believe, Paul, you're going to be getting an offer bumped up. In fact, I think they're even moving the installation I'm up for to get you in office. And I know that you'll be probably going in as Inegard. So tell me, what have you been doing Masonically? You got your third degree in August, as you told our listeners earlier. But you haven't just stopped there. You've had the opportunity to jump in once or twice in a couple of positions and participate. What have those roles been, and how's that been for you?
Well, my first role was a bit of a scary one. I was sitting up in the east with the worship master as chaplain. That was a bit of a tough one because we were doing a third that night, so I had to learn a few charges in just a couple of weeks. Because they're not in an old English type of thing. It's very hard to learn it because my English is very as gar, mate. Yeah, not bad. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, not bad.
I think you should have done. I think you should have done it like that, Paul. It would have added a whole bunch of levity to the whole ceremony. G'day, mate. Welcome.
They just would have turned the lights on and dragged me out. That would have been the end of it.
You mate kneeling before me. God bless you, buddy.
Yeah.
Have a good night, champ.
Oh yeah, right, mate. You be right.
There's a beer at the end of it for you, buddy. You'll be right.
Yeah. So I had to learn actually how to pronounce my words for once, and I had to learn how to not be so nervous and just step up for a little bit. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and that was good fun. As scary as it was good because Don was stirring me up all night. As the worship master of Brunswick United was stirring us up all night, so that was good. It was good fun being up there.
I must admit, Paul, I'm looking forward to the day you're master, when halfway through lodge you go, Siggy break, and just everyone walks out, has a smoke, and comes back in.
It depends on my junior warden, doesn't it? Refreshment. Yep, that'll do. I'll just look at my watch. Just give it a tap.
Just tap the watch. Huh? Yep. We're gonna call off, Reverend. Why are we calling off? Paul needs a cigarette.
It won't get out till 11:30 at night.
Paul and Jack, I reckon. Well, you guys would be the greatest masters. You'll be using the stewards to actually fetch your drinks. Stewards, grab me a scotch.
We could always do it when Paul's master. We could always move the lodge just outside and have an outside lodge. And you could smoke whilst in the chair.
Yeah, I don't know how you're going to time that. You're going to have someone patrolling the streets.
Well, in Pennsylvania, they do lodge in the woods. I mean, I'd say we do the same here, but we've got bushfires over here and cigarettes in the woods. Might not be a good idea, but that'd be an interesting idea. Could you imagine Paul doing an obligation with a cigarette in his mouth?
With an Aussie accent?
Yeah.
I think it'd be funny if... Oh, sorry, I dropped some ash on you. Let me just brush that off.
He's just ashing it out on the clip. Anyway, we're bringing Freemasonry and disrepute here. Let's move on. But, you've had some opportunities, Paul, and it's been great. And those prayers that you do in the third degree is pretty difficult. So I reckon you pulled it off really well. But sitting in the east is nice, isn't it? It's good to sit next to the master, different view up there. And it is a bit daunting. And you actually see a lot of what happens. Because usually... at least when I first joined, I remember going to meetings and just being so lost in thought. I never really paid attention to the finer detail of how it all run. I guess sitting up there, you get to see it all happen, don't you?
Oh, you get to appreciate the job of the worshipful master and the past master. You get to appreciate the job of everyone up there because they got such big roles in every part of the degree work, and it's just amazing how much they can actually remember off the top of their head. And it's good. It was a good opportunity. I was glad I got that to get up there. So. Well,
it was all good. And I think for me, it's been a busy 4 months or so. I've joined another order, as I mentioned earlier, the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia. A fantastic order. One of and I think I mentioned this last time in the last podcast, one of the most underrated orders in the world. I have to say, I've heard all these obscure things about it, but really nice ceremony, simple, very symbolic, fantastic ceremony. And in a couple of other orders, I've been put into office. In the Knights Templar, I was put in as Captain of the Guard. In the Rose Choir, I was put in as Raphael, sitting next to Nick Leroy Meyer, who took up another office just to sit next to me and stir me up for a year. So he's fantastic. And also in a number of other orders, I've been put into positions that have been very interesting. In the Royal and Select Council, I've been put in as the conductor of the council, which I was told is not a big position. And then I rock up the next meeting, I'm told, well, the conductor of the council runs all the degree ceremonies single-handedly. And I thought, wow, thank you very much for that, guys. So we had a candidate, we pulled it off. So next meeting, I'll be a lot more prepared. But it's all exciting, all happening. And despite the fact that some people have there's been some speculation. The same group of people who said that we were an irrelevant soapbox have been saying that we've been dead, that the Blue Land Social Club hasn't been functioning, the podcast is dead. And look, I'll give them credit. We've given them every reason to think so. But just because publicly we haven't been as vocal, there hasn't been as many status updates or postings, doesn't mean we haven't been doing things. And this is where I'm trying to transition, I guess, David and Paul, to the next topic about what the Blue Land Social Club has been doing in that time. We have been continuing strong. Northern District, Paul, you're the secretary out there, business as usual, been running events. All our districts have been functioning at full steam. Our overseas districts have been doing an amazing job. I have to do a shout out to Worshipful Brother Bobby Mitchell, who is the state president of the Blue Land Social Club of Illinois in the United States of America. They are absolutely killing it. They've had events with 50 to 60 people onto them. The energy's been high. The organizing committee, they're telling me they're branching out to another 5 districts. It's incredible. And this is Robert Johnson, Bobby Mitchell, the whole team doing a great job. Sorry, go ahead there, David.
I was about to say, they're putting us to complete shame here in Victoria, where, we have been moving along, but their growth is immense. But I think what it highlights is what they said to us a long time ago was the need for the Blue Land Social Club, especially in America, has never been more great. And I think it's fantastic that an idea that started in a back room in Brunswick, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, is carried over and is just expanding immensely in America. And I must admit, when I get over there, I look forward to going to a Blue Lounge event.
Oh, and that's on my bucket list to go visit our jurisdictions overseas. You've got obviously Illinois, and you've also got the province of Ontario in Canada, And obviously, we're very involved in Manitoba as well. I'm a member of the Castle Island Virtual Lodge. Believe it or not, got made junior deacon, which is the best role in the world because it's a virtual lodge, so I don't actually have to do anything. It's posting out a collar, and I get to wear it, so it's fantastic. But yeah, a member of the Castle Island Virtual Lodge, obviously headed up by Worshipful Brother Nicholas Lane, who is a fantastic friend, deep friend and supporter of ours. And, they're doing great things in Ontario. So really, who would have thought a movement, like you said, an idea in the back of Brunswick has gone international. It's been an absolute success, and we're really, really happy with it. But things have been going on. We haven't died. And to those who have maybe questioned, please have no doubt in your mind, things are continuing strongly, and things are only going to get stronger now. As my time frees up, there'll be some more marketing and sort of statewide leadership and international leadership coming through. And we are going to be bigger and better than we ever have been. So if you are a young Mason, please still keep involved in the Blue Land Social Club. And if you are thinking about joining, nothing's changed. Please get in contact and we will help you join. I mean, there have been some statistics that came out recently from the Northern District. Worshipful Brother Eric Williams, who is the outgoing district coordinator, has discussed the fact that over the last 2 and a bit years, there has been our district, the Northern District, has been the leader in Masonic recruitment. We've kept every young Mason that has joined since April 2016, 100% retention rate since that period of time. And we have led the way in terms of a new interviewing process, in terms of the way we interview candidates and bring them into the craft, all of which has been 100% supported and instrumented by the Blue Land Social Club. Now, we give credit where credit's due. Worshipful Brother Eric Williams is a fantastic man. He's a true leader. He's an absolute inspiration. The work he's done has been incredible. This is a bloke who doesn't just speak, he actually does. We need more people like him in our organizational leadership who has delivered some fantastic results. And we've been there 100% of the way and been really honored to be a part of it. I mean, not one first degree, or be a handful in our district, in the Northern District, have been missed. It's the oldest Blue Lounge there is, the first Blue Lounge. And, in my view, David and Paul, feel free to jump in here. The results speak for themselves. There's no doubt that there's a correlation between the fact that where the Blue Lounge is strongest in the Northern District and here in Victoria is also where the strongest results for recruitment, retention, education, support of young Masons happens to be. It's just not a question in my mind.
Well, even before, I've been doing this a while. I've done over 50 first degrees where I visit and I've introduced myself to the younger members. I've taken along entered apprentices, giving them a chance to witness a first degree for the first time, or giving them a chance to even go into second degrees and third degrees, but mainly first degrees. We go and make sure we hit them all. We've only missed, I think, since we've started doing it, which I wouldn't even know, is a generation before me. But we've been doing it for a long time, and we've been making sure that they feel supported. They make sure they get an envelope, even when they might not have their Freemason Victoria. What are they called? The satchel. What is it?
Yeah, whatever the package is.
That might not be there, but you can guarantee you will get a Blue Lounge letter with some details and a card to make sure you are equipped with what you need to get information that you want. So, yeah, it's 20 young members. If you feel like helping out the Blue Lounge, I would appreciate it personally. If you what's it called? But yeah, if you have any questions, obviously reach out to us, and we'll definitely be there to support you, as we always are.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have done a great job, and obviously you had, we've had a bit of development in the Northern District. You had Steve as president and David as secretary for a while, and then when David jumped ship and went to Greater Gippsland, you've come in, Paul, and been secretary there, and geez, great results. And David, there is no coincidence, is there? Where the Blue Lounge is strong is where Freemason Victoria is strong.
Oh, absolutely not. And I mean, I think this is what we've been saying for
sorry, David, I think you said absolutely not. You meant absolutely yes, or is it?
Yes, absolutely yes.
Sorry, just want to be clear for our listeners here.
I just wanted to completely go against you, Jack, just to form an impromptu debate.
You're wrong, Jack. You're wrong.
If you hear David muted, it's just some censorship on our end. The people who call us an irrelevant soapbox are going to copy and paste what you just said there. But anyway, continue. Okay. Tell everyone why we're so brilliant, please.
Jack, it's okay. I've got a Lamborghini in the driveway. It's fine. Pay no attention to it. No, you're completely correct in that. And I mean, you look at all the great work that we've done in supporting young members. I remember Steve and I, when I was still secretary there, we spent, I think we're out every night one week, just going to every single first degree all over the Northern District just to support it. And when you speak to the members and you sort of say, oh, we're here to support you, just the look in their eyes of being able to go, someone who I don't know has come, who's basically taken up their time to come and support me. It's a great look. And it was very similar to the look we got from one of our listeners who wrote in who had a first degree coming up. And I was thankfully, due to timing, able to go up to Sydney to see him. And that was just a great chance. And I think it does go to show what we've been saying for quite some time, which is the Blue Lounge does play an integral role in greeting new members. While what FMV do is fantastic with their pack, it's a lovely pack, but it's very almost impersonal. With a lot of members, unless they know a member and they've joined, and like Brunswick, we do it a fair bit if we know the person who's joining, we have their friend get up and deliver the pack to them. If it's just, I called FMV one day and said I want to join, and it's just someone at Lodge, they don't know these people. But to have a young face there going, this is just for you, we're here for you, I think it gives them all special and shows them the true value that this organisation has to offer.
But we would be more than happy, assuming that FMV and us were back in partnership, we'd be more than happy to deliver their pack and give it the same effect that we've given ours. And it's been so successful in the district we've been in, and the district coordinators overwhelmingly support us in the sense that they love the fact that they get given a strategic plan, they get given a direction from FMV, they have to implement and achieve targets. And we aren't seen as an impediment, we're actually used as a resource. And we love working really closely with passionate members and leaders like district coordinator, outgoing district coordinator, worshipful brother Eric Williams, to get those results. And I think that has to be the message, which has been what we've been saying all along, that where the Blue Lounge Social Club is strong, FMV is strong as well. And that's also the case in Illinois. Where the Blue Lounge is strong, the Grand Lodge of Ancient, Free and Accepted Masons of Illinois are also strong as well. So, it really is a positive move. And I mean, I'm just saying, I'm really impressed with the results out the Northern District. I thought that was worth bringing up in terms of a correlation with some of the great stuff we've been doing as well. So it's all positive from here. But let's quickly move on to a couple of things. I understand time is getting a bit away from us. Let's talk quickly about this segment I want to do. And this segment is only appropriate for this time of year, probably a one-off segment, but we're going to give it a go. And as you all know, in Australia, our holidays are usually around about, late December through to late January. A lot of us are back at work a little bit earlier than what we usually are. I was back on the 2nd of January, just the first day after New Year's, so nice and early this year. But I thought, since lodges usually close down over December and January and don't start up till February, maybe we could have a bit of a segment about what the best thing about our Masonic holiday has been. And it's too bad Steve isn't here, because as you all know, we did try to record this with Steve, and we had a great conversation with him. Unfortunately, the recording wasn't usable, but Steve has had a fantastic Masonic holiday, so I might give you an example of some of the things that happened to him over that holiday. But David, let's start with you. What's one thing you have loved about your Masonic holiday?
I think it's been, for me, I'd honestly have to say it's probably been not having to necessarily worry about the feeling of letting a lodge down when I'm not able to go there. I mean, the last few months, as we've discussed, I'm a member of 2 craft lodges, but unfortunately Cornucopia meets on our rehearsal night for Brunswick. So because I've been newly in a guard there, I haven't been able to go to pretty much any of the Cornucopia nights. Now, as I'm going in as inner guard there, we're going to work it out so if whatever Brunswick's doing, I'm on top of it and can stay on top of the ball on it. But it really is a situation of just that freedom, knowing I'm not letting a brother down, because I don't like letting the lodges down. But it's also been good just to unwind, decompress, and relax a bit. Well, as much as one can with work. Unfortunately, unlike you, Jack, I worked right through Christmas. So I've had no break off yet. But having said that, I'm also taking 5 weeks off this year to go on a honeymoon around the UK and Europe. So I think it kind of works out.
Yeah, no sympathy over here. But what about you, Paul? What's been the greatest thing about your Masonic holiday?
I've actually had a bit of time off. I've been sleeping. I've been sleeping as much as I've normally been working. So I've been catching up all on all the Miss Lee throughout the year. So she's always good. Obviously had a good Christmas with you guys, the family, and that, and then went up to Rosebud for a little bit, which was fun, wasn't it, Jack?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Yeah,
And
no need to come home straight after work from Mill Park and rush to lodge in Brunswick.
Oh yeah, when I used to live in Mill Park, yeah, that was a bit of a trip, but why not? I suppose good people. It's worth the trip.
Well, this year will be made a lot easier, especially living around the corner. But it's good to see that you got a bit of a rest. My favourite thing, and I don't know if this guys it won't really surprise you because you heard me say it when we had our failed attempt at recording last time, but our listeners might be interested. My favourite thing about my Masonic holiday was not having old men yelling words at me. That was my favourite thing. Like I was saying last time, sometimes I go to bed and I feel I think about, the old men yelling, prompting words at me, all of which were probably wrong.
Now,
be good to
Jack,
get a break from that.
I'm just going to say something on this. I've been thinking about it since you said it, and it disturbed me greatly. And I think the thing that disturbed me the most is the thought that when you're with a person of the opposite sex and you're engaging in some adult fun time, you've got old men yelling directions at you.
As Sheldon says in Big Bang Theory, coitus.
Yep, coitus. When you're engaging in coitus, your mind isn't on the young lady. Your mind is on an old man shouting directions at you.
My mind is always on ritual, and associated with ritual comes the prompting. That's probably the thing I missed. I didn't miss the most. Going to rehearsals, reciting a charge, and having the East just bellow up in words and incantations of words just to try and prompt me along. But honestly, I don't get prompted that often. But when I do, it's a scary experience. I haven't missed that. That's been good to have a bit of a break from that. That's for sure. But there you go. There's our Masonic holiday. Not too bad. Steve had an interesting Masonic holiday. He in fact imposed a policy which I thought was interesting, and that was to not talk about anything to do with Masonic administration. He's now secretary of the Brunswick United Lodge, believe it or not, and also a member of the Holy Royal Arch chapter, and a member of another craft lodge. So he's definitely got the same problem as us, David. Steve can't say no to anything, and he imposed a ban on talking about Masonic administration. In fact, he went for a walk in the park and ran into the local secretary of his another craft lodge he's a member of, and said to him, "I have to stop you. I'm not talking about anything to do with Masonic administration. Let's talk about something else." And I thought that was a pretty well-disciplined approach, David. Maybe something we could try.
It is very well-disciplined, and I'd love to see us try that. And in true brought to light style, fail at it miserably. Because I have a feeling, Jack, if anyone approached either you or myself and started talking Masonically, we would go, sure thing, let's have a 4-hour chat about what's happening in the lodge, or what's lodge business, or what's ritual business, or something like that. I just could imagine us doing that without even giving it a second thought.
Let's face it, we can't help ourselves.
It's true. We're a lost cause.
We're a lost cause. We're lost. But there you go, my friends, our listeners. That's our Masonic holidays. And I guess the last thing we need to do, because we've been rambling along and people have probably already turned off the podcast or deleted us anyway because they thought we died. The last thing we need to do is our shameless plugs, talking about things up and coming. And David, I believe you've got a short list of things, so maybe we'll go straight to you first.
Yep, certainly. So what's coming up for me? The only real big thing coming up for me in the next few months is obviously the installation at Cornucopia in March, I believe it is. I'll confirm the exact date. I haven't got the date there or handy with me at the moment. So come along for that. We'll have Worshipful Master Simon Reynolds going in again, and we'll have me going in as inner guard by the sounds of it. So it should be a good fun night, so feel free to come down. It's the premier dining lodge of Victoria, regardless of what others may say. There is no finer dining lodge than Cornucopia. We
are going to dispute that, because the actual premier dining lodge of the highest quality and esteem, the only lodge in Victoria, and I dare say the Southern Hemisphere, that had its own orchestra, a fantastic lodge, a great lodge, meets at the Calvin Club. The Lodge of the Golden Fleece is having on the 9th of February a very, very important meeting. It'll be a first degree, and then it'll be followed by dinner at Zio's, which from what I understand is about $60 a head. It'll be a fantastic night. Jump on Facebook, check out the Golden Fleece Lodge number 300, and obviously sign up to that event and get along and support them. It's going to be a big night, the 9th of February. Also, don't forget, the Brunswick United Lodge is back in action on the 21st of February. So get along to that. I think we're having a night of lectures, and we're going to be talking about a couple of different tracing boards. So get along and get involved and have a beer with us and a nice meal. And the Western Street United Lodge is back this month. That's my other craft lodge, number 94 on the Register of Grand Lodge of Victoria. We have got a double third degree. It's meeting in January. So if you've got your Masonic aches up and you want to get to a lodge meeting in January, 25th or thereabouts, I believe, is the meeting. And we look forward to seeing you there. And also, I need to do a plug. Brother Chris Smith, who is joining the Rose Choir, is doing the 18th degree. If you are in the Rose Choir, you want to get along to Coburg Ascension Sovereign Chapter, meeting on the 29th, Monday the 29th of January at 7:30 p.m. We'll be doing a perfection ceremony and bringing our brother into the Rose Choir, which is a wonderful, wonderful degree. So get along. The other thing to keep your eye out for is the next meeting of the Castle Island Virtual Lodge will be announced soon. Make sure you jump on Facebook and like their page as well. That way you can keep in the loop of what's happening with that lodge. A fantastic lodge. And if you want to go on the mailing list, contact Worship Brother Nicholas Lane, and he'll get you on that list and make sure you get along. But other than that, that's all that's coming up so far in terms of shameless plugs. One thing that we will plug, and that Paul and I are going to be doing, is we're off to Hawaii. We're going to be going there from the 30th of January through to the 16th of February, back to the United States. Sorry, Larry couldn't get to Pennsylvania, but that will happen eventually. But we're off to Hawaii, and I'll be contacting our friends Morty and the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge there, who I got the chance to visit last time. And we'll be Paul and I will hopefully getting to a lodge meeting or two. I really want to experience an American degree, a tiled lodge. I went last time as an open installation. So I look forward to getting there and experiencing the whole journey. And Paul, wait until you see the lodge, Honolulu Lodge. They've got a fantastic building. The lodge room absolutely blows you away. The ceiling, when they rebuilt it, the ceiling was actually set up by a person from Hawaii University who mapped out the sky as it would have been at the time of King Solomon. They hired people to put LED lights that twinkle like stars to match the very constellations as would have been above the night sky, above the temple in King Solomon's time.
Oh, wow.
And when you turn off the lights, that's what you can see, the constellation as though it would have been at the time of King Solomon. So I think it's incredible, and we'll get along and see those guys there. A lot of young members in Hawaii because of the military presence, and a fantastic jurisdiction. So we look forward to getting there. If you happen to be in Hawaii, give us a contact and we'll catch up with you.
And Jack, I'll be very disappointed if you don't come back and say, I've established a Hawaiian Blue Lounge social club.
Well, something tells me the Grand Lodge is basically the Blue Lounge anyway, in terms of the fact that they're so young. I think they had a Grand Master in the last 10 years that was 37 years old. So they are absolutely kicking goals. This is a jurisdiction almost died and just absolutely rejuvenated itself. A really great lesson, a bit like the Grand Lodge of Utah. These guys have come from nothing and really built a fantastic jurisdiction. So Paul, obviously, we're looking forward to getting over there and meeting a few brothers.
Absolutely.
Now, I have been told here by our developer and producer, Brother Paul, that I do need to plug our YouTube channel. Now, we do have a number of subscribers, and obviously we are looking to put our content on them more often, hopefully more videos and vlogs. We want to start getting into the vlog space. It's just easy to do and also be a bit informative and get you to see a bit more what's happening in Freemasonry in Victoria and get to know relevant figures in the Blue Lounge Social Club and the Brought to Light Masonic Podcast. So jump on YouTube and chuck in Blue Lounge Social Club, and you will find our channel. Subscribe, and obviously watch our material, and you can catch up with our episodes. We'll be making sure they get backdated and put up there eventually. It'll be a bit of a playlist. Might take a bit of time, but we'll get that done. And keep in touch with the Blue Lounge Social Club through our Facebook page as well. That's facebook.com/Blue Lounge Vic, VIC at the end. And check out our partners in Illinois, Queensland, New South Wales, and Ontario, Canada, and like their pages to also keep in the loop of what's happening in your local area. And of course.
And as far as the YouTube channel, it's www.youtube.com/Blue Lounge Social Club, and that'll get you straight to our page.
And also don't forget to check out the Brought to Light Masonic Podcast website and Facebook page. The website is podcast.blueloungesc.com, and the Facebook page is www.facebook.com/Blue Lounge Ost. Sorry, I've screwed up my list there. It's brought to light.
Check the link at the bottom. We're going to leave a link at the bottom.
Look, it'll all be in the show notes. Just don't take anything I say for granted. But either way, check it out.
I think we're just going to have to put the whole episode in show notes because we've made right a hash of it.
Well, look, I think that wraps up a fantastic episode 48. Back to Basics has been called. Yes, we are back. Not that we'll go on for that long. Okay, we'll go on for a little while. But we are back, and we are so happy to be back. And to our listeners, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you for your loyalty, for your support, for your really inspiring messages. Some of them were a bit of a kick in the ass, and that was important as well. And we thank you for the time that you do and you give to us to listen to what we say. We aren't anything important. It is always bewildering when you meet someone who you've never met before, who knows who you are because they listen to the podcast, and the way they look at you and talk to you is just humbling, very humbling. Nothing I thought I'd ever find myself in, but we aren't important. You are important, and we do this because we want to give you a voice. We want to give you the education, the news, the updates, and the support that you need to make Freemasonry fun again. And we really do look forward to bringing you that content over the next, eternity, hopefully. And hopefully you get to know a few other of our friends and brethren who will also be hosting the show. And we on behalf of all of the team, thank you. And we are so, so glad and happy to be back. Dave, you got any closing remarks for our listeners?
Only really to second everything you said, Jack. I mean, we do thank all our listeners, of course, and everyone who's sent us messages and to make sure that we're all right and whether we'll be back or not. I mean, it has been fantastic and quite humbling on the amount of support that we've received from people just wanting to make sure that we were okay. And I must admit, I'm glad we're back. I think this year is going to be a big year for the Brought to Light Masonic podcast. Hopefully, I think we've found a winning formula which will enable us to continue to put everything out there. But yeah, I just want to second everything you said and say absolute thanks on behalf of myself and yourself for everyone who listens. We know we tend to talk a bit of drivel from time to time, but we do it all in good humor, and we hope you enjoy us.
And look, talking about thank yous, Paul, thank you very much for coming back on the Brought to Light Masonic podcast, and obviously jumping back on the team of people helping with editing. That was one of the reasons we did stop, to be honest with you. It was a big job for we'd do the episode, we'd set up the content, we'd do all the research, and then I was editing it and then trying to post it. It became really difficult, and your help here is really important. And you are famous, of course, but thank you very much for coming on and being part of the episode today.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
Okay, so I guess that wraps up episode 48. Please tune in a couple of weeks' time. 2 weeks from now, I'll be releasing another episode. We'll announce our topic via Facebook, and if we do get time, you might hear from us sooner, but aim for 2 weeks. And we do thank you once again for your time and patience. I'm your host, Brother Jack Aquilina.
And I'm your host, Brother David Illingworth.
And we will speak to you in 2 weeks' time. Stay safe, stay on the level, and please keep listening and subscribe to our YouTube channel.